Hello, my name is Kevin Luong, and today we're going to be going over the fifth section assignment, which entails the energy crisis in the 70s and the early 21st century terrorism. So the first topic that we're going to go over is the energy crisis in the 1970s. As you can see, there is a refusal of acknowledgement in the Israel state. This happened because the Allied powers brought out land from the British-controlled territory of Palestine, which created the Israel state. But the population, or the Arab population, they weren't fond of it, and they never acknowledged them, which then led to the Yom Kippur War back in 1973. This happened when Egypt and Syria attacked the Israel on the Jewish holiday, which is why it's named after Yom Kippur. And then next would be the OPEC, which was a limitation on the oil shipments to the U.S. and the Netherlands. Doing so increased prices of the oil by the barrel, and after that, the population in the U.S. They're going to be affected because gas price is going to increase, and it's probably going to increase, four to five folds. Who knows? But we're going to go into that a little bit down the road here. The effects that it had during the energy crisis was the price in the oil that we mentioned earlier. It increased four times the original price. So we're looking from $3 for a barrel of gas, probably to around $12 or so. On top of that, the gas stations were pretty chaotic. They were jammed gas stations. I mean, think about it. These prices are increasing. So everyone's going to try to get their gas as soon as possible before the prices keep going up. And this also affected their daily lives because everyone's trying to go to work, probably go to the grocery store, whatever they need to do, they're driving all over the place. But on top of that, they're using the fuel, so they're going to have to keep, refilling. And if you already see, the one picture shows that, sorry, no gas. That probably meant because the person couldn't afford the barrel anymore by, $12. Back then, $12 didn't seem much today, but back then that was a lot of money. On top of that, if you look at the picture below, 48 cents for a gallon of gas. That was high back then. In my mind, I would picture that being possibly around $6, $7 for a regular tank of gas, or I mean, for a regular gallon of gas. But on a global scale, there's going to be limitations on driving, boating, flying, anything that's going to be using these resources. They don't want to be overusing them because it's going to cost them more. So the question is, how long is this going to last? What is it going to do in the long term? What's going to happen? Well, as you can see, the embargo was lifted back in 1974. I wrote down that prices were still high, even though we lifted this embargo. Oil should be back to where it was, but it was still lingering at the high price. So the population is wondering, hey, what's going on? Why is it still happening? Like I said, it's probably going to take some time for them to recuperate and get prices back to normal. But on top of this, environmentalism became certain, and this was also a motivating force behind the policy makings in Washington. And then you can see that it's creation of the Emergency Petroleum Allocation Act and reducing the American dependence on the foreign fossil fuel. With that being said, after that dramatic impact on the population, they want to start depending on renewable resources such as maybe the wind, solar, and so on, possibly nuclear. But the point is that they don't want to be dependent on this non-renewable resource, because what if something like that happens again? They got through it one time, but maybe that it's going to be a big struggle that they don't want to go to. So how about we focus on some renewable energies, what they're trying to say. Now we're going to go over the terrorism in the 21st century, globalization. Um, First topic we're probably going to go over is going to be 9/11. The World Trade Center attack, the Pentagon. This is when the planes flew into the building as a terrorist attack by the Islamic extremist group, um, most likely behind Al Qaeda, which is led by Osama bin Laden. They hijacked four airliners, carried out the suicide attacks, trying to target the U.S. When that happened, obviously it caused a chaos for us. The country's is on a high alert. American support troop was sent to Israel and has a military presence in the Middle East. Now, the first question we want to ask is, why did they do that? It's probably because they wanted to attack us and target us to put fear in our minds. Obviously that put us on high alerts, which is why we have all these security measures through airports and people coming into the country, just so we can prevent as much as we can. We can't do it all, but we're gonna do the most. That's gonna be a for sure. We're all about power, so that could be possibly why they did it. They wanted to try to show power back. Osama bin Laden, he's saying all these things. He's thinking that he's the mastermind, that he's going to be able to take this power from us. But eventually, and back in 2011, we finally tracked him down, and he was presumed deceased as the troops tracked him down at a base and killed him. Next thing you know, not next thing, but you're going to see that there's going to be some security acts in place. One we have here is the USA Patriot Act, which this is to limit the freedom of the Americans just a little bit. And as you can see, in the photo that we have here is a little cartoon drawing. It's at an airport. As you can see, airport security is way higher than what it used to be, and there's no problem with that. As you can see, these people are going through. This dude looks like he's in boxers, but it's just to show that we're going to do everything we can to prevent, that attack. The lasting impact. So what does this do to the country? We're going to prioritize our national security and defense. Obviously, that's going to prevent as much as possible. There's going to be some ongoing wars, where we're going to retaliate a little bit, Guantanamo Bay, and then Homeland Security and TSA, we're going to up those. In this picture here, you can see, yeah, it's going to be a little longer. That's what the guy's saying, a little bit longer, but more for our safety, meaning airport security is going to be backed up a little bit, but it's better to be, safe than sorry is pretty much what he's saying. So take some time, search through whatever you need to do, and then move on. So now let's compare the energy crisis and the terrorism. Obviously, these were started by foreign countries. They have that in common. They are trying to target us. And a difference is that during the energy crisis, we knew immediately what the reason was, who was started, or who has started it. Whereas terrorism is going to take some time to figure that out. Who did this? Who would probe this type of situation? During the energy crisis, as we mentioned a while back, the oil prices increased tremendously. Now, terrorism, in this case, what rose was the death, people that were left startled, but on top of that, security rose as well. Back in the energy crisis, people became cautious in a way where they're spending, whereas terrorism, they're cautious of the people that they're around. Racism became a thing. They wanted to make sure they're not around somebody that looks Muslim, and they're fearing for that. Whereas the energy crisis is more about money and trying to keep as much of it as possible. So let's compare this to Reagan's America. Off the bat, Reagan would be disappointed on the amount of money spent for security and the troops to be sent over, but on the other hand, we did have an attack against us. However, it's been a long process, and it still continues today as we're still supplying the money for the security and the troops to fight for us. But then again, Reagan was a conservative. He was viewed as conservative as the president of the United States. Wanted to save as much money as possible, which is probably why he pulled out our troops during the war.